Very warm welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Michelle de Klerk. I'm the founder of the Women's Chapter, and I'm delighted today to be joined by two sustainability trailblazers and two women whose careers I have followed for a long time, and I'm now very, very honored to be in touch with and to know. Jane Shepherdson, who has a CBE for her services to the fashion industry, who was a trailblazer at Topshop and very much responsible for turning it around in its heyday, and then moving on to Whistles, and now working with My Wardrobe HQ, which is a very sustainable rental clothing platform and resale platform. We're going to be talking to Jane about her phenomenal career and also her insights into sustainability and what she sees for the future in terms of trends for fashion. And the amazing Diana. I've been very fortunate to have collaborated with Diana, the founder of Positive Luxury, who also has the most amazing career around sustainability. It's been your goal and mission, I think, for the majority of your career, Diana, and probably at a time when people thought you might be crazy or didn't want to listen to you. And I'm so pleased now that you have very much you have such prominence in the luxury industry in terms of the work that you do, and are so sought after for your expertise and your insights. So it's wonderful to have you here with us today. Thank you. And these events wouldn't be possible if it weren't for Collyer Bristow, who's our partner for this event, our legal partner. They've supported a series of our events, and they really champion and support ambitious women in business and entrepreneurial businesses. They've provided incredible support to the Women's Chapter as we have grown from a legal perspective and being a sounding board for us. So we're incredibly grateful to have them and their expertise as part of our community. So a very big thank you to the Collyer Bristow team. I know that sustainability is a very important factor for them in terms of the way that they do business and the way that they interact with their clients and the kinds of clients they work with. So it's really wonderful to have them with us today. So without further ado, we've got just under an hour left. The way that it's going to work today, if you have questions, please pop them in the chat. We will have time afterwards for a few questions Q&A. If, as we're chatting, you find there's something that's relevant to the conversation, I will integrate that into our chat. And I'm also going to spotlight our speakers so that we can focus on them while they're chatting. And hopefully we can keep it as interactive as possible, but please do try and keep your microphones on mute, please. So let me add you, and Diana, I'm going to add to Spotlight as well. There we go. Right, Diana, do you want to take yourself off mute so that we can, there we go, brilliant. So I think I'd like to start with a question for both of you. And we're really brilliant to have just your sort of insights as to how you got to where you are now in terms of your sustainability journey. Diana, can we start with you?
Yes, of course. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. It's always an absolute honor to work with you and to actually see you. And it's an incredible pleasure to actually see Jane again. So thank you both, and thank you everybody to join in today. So I started my career in sustainability back in 99, 2000, and I started my first business in 2002. And I always say this, it's like, you know, it was very much like banging my head against a brick wall consistently for the first 20 years of my career. It's only the last 3 years that I actually started having fun when the world has started to wake up to the word sustainability. When I started, obviously, you know, I've got an accent, as you can probably tell. And imagine talking about sustainable development back in the beginning of the year 2000. It was an incredible challenge. But the one thing I have learned is resilience and belief. I come from Argentina, and you know, very early on in my life, I have learned, you know, having grown up in dictatorship, that the only way to do things is just being very consistent and very resilient and just going through the motions. And I'm very excited that now sustainability is a word that everybody uses in every single conversation. The media doesn't need to be convinced any longer that this is important. I remember, you know, begging editors to take us seriously and to write about this, especially in the fashion industry. Take that seriously. This is important. This is the future. Nobody wanted to know. But I guess the world has changed, and people has actually have a renaissance and woke up to the fact that we cannot ignore sustainability any longer. And I think the last bit of good news is the investment community finally has waken up to the fact that forget about whether it's the right thing to do, is the most financially rewarding thing to do. And now money finally is talking and getting to realize that this is not just an ethical issue or an environmental issue, it's a financial issue too. So I am really looking forward to the unlocking, and hopefully a new normal will be a new dawn and people will be, kind of wanting to embrace this in a different way, in a way that perhaps we never have managed to embrace it before.
That's really encouraging. Thank you, Diana. And Jane, would you share with us your kind of journey?
Yes, mine's been a little bit more of a twisting journey, I think, than Diana's, because as you pointed out, I started at Topshop way back actually in the late 80s, and I suppose I kind of do feel in many ways not responsible for the whole of fast fashion, obviously, because that would be terrible, but certainly as someone who has been involved in that side of the business for a long time. I think it's probably fair to say that when I left Topshop in 2007, I then I took a year out and I spent a year working with Safia from Peopletree, who were one of the earliest fair trade pioneers. She had actually also been trading within our store on Oxford Street, so I knew her quite well. So I spent a year working with her, visiting her factories in Bangladesh and also visiting some other people's factories in Bangladesh, which was very revealing. And I spent a bit of time working with Oxfam as well, doing projects with them, sort of creative projects with their stores and trying to find a way to make their stores more attractive, I guess, to a younger clientele, which fortunately now is not needed at all. I left there and then I went to Whistles and tried with Whistles to create a business that was both sustainable and relevant for women who needed sort of solutions, I suppose, and realized that it's a very difficult thing to do, to take a business that's already up and running and make it sustainable in every way. I mean, the journey towards sustainability is a long one, and it's a process very much. So I worked at Whistles, and we did as much as we felt we could do, and that I suppose I just got to the stage where I thought, I need to do more. I need to take some time out. I need to work out how I can use the experience that I've got now and use it in a much more positive way. I think it probably got to the stage where I was sort of feeling guilty whenever I went into a store, and I would go into Liberty and think, oh, how exciting, because I do really love fashion. And I'd go into Liberty and then I'd think, oh shit, no, I can't buy any, this is terrible. So it kind of took all the joy out of fashion for me. So I kind of had to think about how can I make this work? How can I still enjoy it? Because it is a wonderful creative industry, but in a more responsible way, I suppose. And so I kind of took off again and gave myself some time to think. Thought about, stayed in a lot of Airbnbs and thought, hang on a minute, why don't we do this for fashion? And so that's kind of where the rental thing came from, I guess. So that's where I am now.
I think what's interesting about what you were just talking about, Jane, is about the stage of the business in terms of how easy it is to integrate sustainability practices. And Diana, it would be interesting to hear from you. I mean, because I think we've got lots of different businesses of different stages in the room today, the founders of businesses as well as professionals who may be working with organizations like that. Do you think it's an advantage to be at a kind of earlier stage of your business in terms of being able to create sustainable practices and integrate that into the way that you operate?
I do actually. I have another hat as well, actually, which is the director of London Fashion Fund, which is a fund that invests in small fashion and fashion tech businesses, usually sort of very close to startup, if you like. And so I'm seeing a lot of these businesses starting from scratch, and I think it is a lot easier to decide exactly what your vision is and exactly what it is that you will and won't do, and what you find acceptable and what isn't acceptable right at the very beginning, and then to find a way to create your business whilst keeping that in mind. I think it's much more difficult if you already have potentially a long supply chain, you have, I don't know, packaging or whatever the things are that are part of your supply chain. It's quite difficult to change them. And then it becomes, each thing that you change is usually more expensive if you're doing it in a responsible way to begin with. You may well get the return later on, but to begin with, it will be an additional cost. And you'll probably think to yourself, I'm not sure if I can afford to do this or not. If you're starting from scratch, you don't think about whether you can afford it or not. You just think, right, this is the right thing to do. This is what I'm going to do. And this is what it's going to cost me. So I will kind of work within those parameters. So I think, yes, it probably is easier to start from scratch. I don't know about you, Diana.
Yeah, in terms of ease, of course, when you start, it's always easier to start with sustainability at the heart of it. But I mean, there's a lot of businesses that are already made, and they are like, especially in the luxury businesses, you have 120, 150, 200 years old businesses. But I think that, the key to integrate sustainability is first and foremost to actually make it activate into the business, understanding where you are. And like Jane said, understanding where you want to go. And this is a journey of constant improvement. So there is no end. It's, it's like digital. It keeps growing, it keeps changing, it keeps improving, and so on. But the other point is, like to your point, Jane, in terms of the cost of it, collaboration is the key. So within Positive Luxury, in our community, what we do is we connect people. So sustainability should be pre-competitive. It's not a competitive advantage anymore. Is the only thing that you need to be thinking is like saying, do I need packaging or do I need an HR person? It's not a choice. It's in a lot of ways, it's pre-competitive. So it's about connecting people to be able to get, especially if you're a small business, to actually reach this economy of scale, and actually lowering the entry point, the quantities, the numbers, and therefore the price. So, you can actually have two fashion brands that want to get rid of plastic altogether, or maybe move to compostable or biodegradable plastic. So connecting them and letting them sort it out and get on with it, so they can actually reach the numbers. So everybody pays a little bit less, but it's making it accessible. But like you said, Michelle, what are the steps? Is first and foremost, know where you are. So what are your key indicators from a carbon, from a waste, from a water perspective? And also that's the environmental side, but in the social side is from a diversity and inclusion perspective, from a, understanding your supply chain, having visibility of that supply chain. And when you know where you are, then it's a very easy, I say easy, it's a very clear, I guess, roadmap in terms of how do you make those reductions and how do you integrate and connect with people to have to move your path to actually do this pivoting into building a more sustainable company.
Thank you, Diana. And I think one of the things that you and I have spoken about before in the past around sustainability is that, there are no stupid questions. And if you're starting a business, you do need to ask questions and to learn and to be willing to be vulnerable, I guess, in terms of the learning curve. And that, yes, we're going to make mistakes on the way, but doing something is better than doing nothing. And I think sustainability can be quite intimidating for business owners to start off, because they don't want to talk about trying to be sustainable until they feel they absolutely are. But am I right in thinking that there is no absolute point in terms of sustainability? It's an ongoing journey, because we always need to keep doing better and trying harder. I mean, in that sense, how would you describe the concept of sustainability if you were talking to a business owner? What should they strive for?
There is actually one definition of sustainability. There is no many, there's one. And actually, it was coined by Harlem Brundtland in 1980s in the Geneva Convention. And it's so simple. Remember this one, or Google it, probably is better. She said something along the lines of sustainability or sustainable development is about meeting the needs of today without compromising future generations' needs. That's it. Simple. If you actually see the entire world through this lens, from a people and planet perspective, you will have to make no compromises, because everything that you see is through this lens. So you will be able to actually innovate and re-engineer in your business, taking into account other people and our world. How simple is that?
Well, yeah, and it's a good lesson to live by, isn't it? In terms of everything that we do. It's about community and supporting one another and preserving what we have for future generations, which is kind of a no-brainer when you break it down like that. Diana, I wanted to ask you, and for those in the room that don't know, Positive Luxury release a highly anticipated report every January, and it's their predictions report around sustainability every year, and it's really comprehensive, and I really encourage you. I'll include a link in the follow-up email actually, where everybody can go and request to download it. But I was reading it ahead of this event, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that it suggested, I mean, obviously the last year has been devastating in terms of human tragedy and the side effect of COVID-19. But actually, one of the positives seems to have been the amount of innovation that has resulted, and how it's been strangely uplifting for sustainability and our approach to it. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, has it been a positive side effect of this tragedy we've been enduring for the last year?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say positive, but positive in the context that we can talk about positivity. But I think that from a personal perspective, we as individuals have actually been able to have time and been able to actually go back to nature, have those walks, go to those parks. And when we slow down, our planet have the grace to be able to breathe a little bit without us, taking from it. And this actually, the headlines and, kind of everything that everybody is being informed about has made everybody realize, whether you are in the leadership organization or where you are just working from an organization, that our dependency to the natural world is an imperative, and we can't keep taking, we have to give back. So I think what COVID-19 has done is to accelerate the innovation that businesses have. I mean, Jane has been ahead of the trend because, my wardrobe is huge, been going on for ages now. But I think that we have actually understood that we want less, no more. We are a lot more selective in where do we put our money, our time, our affections, our everything. And how do we interact with the natural world? So I think that this is the time that businesses have innovated and have actually looked in and said, okay, how do we disrupt? How do we equip? How do we prepare for this new normal? And the new normal will have to be without compromises. So you can't cut corners anymore. Transparency is absolutely an imperative. And also the fact that, our dependency with the natural world is a reality. We cannot deny it any longer. And this is what I think it made companies to really go through this innovation route. And I would say even more to innovating in business models, innovating in the way that we source, in the way that we manufacture, across every area of every business, whether it's beauty, it's travel, it's drinks, it's retail. Innovation have been the constant in the last 12 months. And I like actually to hand over the mic because Jane, my wardrobe AQ has been going on for ages now, and you are probably in the best place right now in order to take, fashion to the next level. I mean, you are the queen of fashion, so.
That's very kind of you, Diane. What's strange about rental is that, I mean, clearly there hasn't been any rental for the last year because we haven't been going out, so there's no event, so there's nothing to get dressed up for, so there's no reason for it. But actually the interest in it has grown incredibly, and I find myself talking to people sort of 2 or 3 times each week about rental, about the increase in rental, about how people are now accepting rental as part of the norm. But I think it's our duty to offer people something. You know, we're not going to get rid of fast fashion by just telling people they can't have fast fashion. You know, it doesn't work like that. If people want to have exciting clothes to wear, we have to offer them a viable alternative to that. And for me, rental does that, but rental's probably only one of the planks, if you like, to solve the whole dilemma that fashion poses. You know, for me, it's I don't see why on earth you would not rent. I mean, it's the most fun. It allows you to wear clothes that you couldn't possibly afford, that feel absolutely amazing, that make you look amazing, the best version of yourself. And you don't have to buy them. You can just wear them for like 30 quid a night, and then someone else can wear it. So, you know, it's not producing anything. The clothes are already there. To me, it's fantastic. You know, it couldn't be better. And I say this because I spent about a year researching ethical clothing brands, and I have to say that I was really, really disappointed with what I saw, because most of them had forgotten the most important thing, and that's creating something beautiful that people are going to want. You know, that I saw a lot of brands that were very sustainable, ethical, using organic cotton, etc., but the clothes were so awful that I really felt the best thing that they could do would be to stop producing anything at all, because we don't need any more clothes, you know. So it's yeah, I mean, it's yeah. So rental, I think rentals is incredible, but I recognise that it is only a part of the whole picture.
Do you know? Sorry, Michelle. Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just go. Jane and I know each other. I always feel like talking to her. I was going to say we're doing a report with Bain. You know, Bain and Co. We're launching it on the 10th of March, which is about Luxco 30, which is an imaginary company, and which is a fashion company. And we look at what are the areas of growth of businesses. And we have identified like 4 or 5 different pillars. One obviously is rental. The other one is repairing, leasing, and services. So the incremental of growth personally, I think growth in the way that we have seen it pre-COVID-19 is a dirty word. I think that when we redefine growth with people, planet, and at the heart of it, we would probably see a different type of growth of what we want, instead of this, you know, 2 or 3 excess that everybody expect month on month. But in 2030, the growth that we will see come from services, not from pure production of goods. And yeah, I will share the report, or you guys probably will be able to download the report after the 10th. But this is only going to be an incremental trend by the time that we reach 2030, because 2030 is the year in which we need to achieve the global goals, and we need to be in the road to 2050, which is in line with the Paris Agreement, when we really need to achieve absolute reductions of carbon. Not achieving that means that we will be in a trajectory to the world to 4 degrees, which is actually too hot in a negative way. So we really need to actually get these our numbers down. We need to get our temperatures down globally, and the only way to that is to, you know, do a little bit less, do a little bit better, and find different business models to be able to disrupt industries.
Totally, but producing less has to be a part of this. I mean, there's no question that we need to produce less, and it's interesting. And some of the businesses that I'm seeing that are coming through, I mean, there is definitely something coming through in terms of virtual clothing, and you know, we may laugh at it now and say sort of, you know, but that's pointless. That's you know, the gamers are interested in it, but I'm not, because it's got nothing to do with me. But the most obvious example is that we're sitting here on Zoom now, and I'd love to be wearing a Chanel jacket, a virtual one or not, it doesn't matter, you know. So as our world becomes more digital, then virtual clothing can be a part of that. The other thing, I mean, I also met a business recently who are making fabric that photosynthesizes. So what it does is that they create this fabric that actually absorbs oxygen, absorbs carbon dioxide, and emits oxygen. And a square meter of the fabric that they have made absorbs the same amount of carbon dioxide as an oak tree. So this is astonishing. I mean, this is the sort of technology that we need to be backing, we need to be really investing in to take us to the next place. Imagine if you had a jacket slung over the back of your chair in the sunlight that was actually starting to absorb the CO2 around us instead of contributing to it. So I mean, there are these incredible things happening, and I think it's just the speed with which we get behind these things that is kind of important.
Absolutely. And so I was going to say, this is not just on clothing. You can have virtual makeup now, so no more thousands of tins and pots all over the shop in the bathroom. Forget about that. Buy what you need. And if you're in Zoom, virtual makeup. And you know, even in jewelry, there is this incredible brand called Sky Diamonds. So Sky, as you know, is kimberlite. Kimberlite is basically when blah, 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 but it's absorption of carbon and compression of heat and so on. So basically they're making diamonds from the sky. So you compress CO2 at incredible heat and you're making diamonds out of CO2. So the innovation that we have seen in the last 12 months is absolutely mind-blowing. And I cannot be more excited about the future. I wish sometimes, I say this to my team in a positive way, it doesn't come across that way, but I wish I was 15 years younger because I like to see the end of it. And I don't know if I will. So, but whoever is under 30, it's down to you guys. We need to drive this to the end now.
Oh, you know, it's so positive to hear that. And honestly, like the excitement that you both have it's palpable. Like I really I'm feeling excited about the future and discovering new brands that are doing things in a different way. And I think the responsibility for all of us is to in terms of our purchasing decisions, to think before we put our money behind a business. You know, how are we as part of that chain contributing to this change? And I think you both have mentioned, and I know that you've been championing investment into these kinds of businesses for a long time. Diana, in your report, it talks about how 2020 was very much a shakeup for bringing investment into sustainable businesses from the fringe onto the mainstream. And I mean, I see that as a positive, because I know how long you have been championing this, and Jane, what you do with the fashion fund as well. So is there light at the end of the tunnel, or is that encouraging for businesses just starting out, that there is money out there to support their vision and their mission?
Not only is money out there, it will not be money for businesses that are not doing it, which is much more exciting personally. ESG investments, so economic, social, and governance investment, have been around for at least 12 years. But you know, the funds that there were at that time, they have been growing and growing. And there is one of the pioneering funds called Generation Investment Management, which is basically run by dear friends. They've been in business for 12 years now. They have 3 trillion in asset management, all from sustainable investments. They've been ahead of the time, like you know, a lot of us. But the reality is that Mark Carney, who is leading the COP26 investment front, and he's leading from the front, he has been really pushing about this building back better with sustainability at the heart of it from the investment community. So the fact that you have to report and or be mindful of your ESG matrix, it's going to be it's not going to be an option. It's what you need to do now in order to be able to seek money. And I know that, before was sustainable businesses, they didn't get the funding and so on and so forth, but you will have to have an innovation and a part of sustainability that is scalable. And this is the point, it's about scale. Like Jane said, this fabric that you produce zillions of it, and you can actually capture carbon from the air, or sky diamonds. You have to be able to have scalable businesses with a scalable innovation in order to solve the climate crisis. So if you have that, definitely you will be able to seek money from the investment community, because that's what they're looking for. We do need to we need to find a way to actually reduce the amount of carbon that we put into the atmosphere, but also sequestrate the carbon that is already there lingering since the Industrial Revolution. So carbon doesn't go away unless it's captured. So we have the output that we already have been having since the Industrial Revolution, plus all the new carbon that we're putting in, which is why we are in the hot mess that we are.
In terms of, I'd love to get both of your thoughts, because obviously over the last year, there's been a massive change. Many businesses that have had to pivot. Those that have a bricks and mortar footprint have had to change the way that they operate. Many, those that have been able to swiftly change. And I know that the luxury industry, in terms of online sales, there's those that were able to adapt quickly have benefited from that. But what do you both see as the future of retail and the way that we're going to shop? I mean, and for many of the people in the room today who possibly were working toward having a bricks and mortar footprint, or have that already and have moved away from it, it will be interesting to hear what you see for the future in terms of how businesses will present themselves and be visible.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, because I do think that most of us are going to be quite shocked when we eventually do open up, to find that there are so many businesses that were on our high streets and are not there anymore. I think some high streets will see probably almost 50% of the stores just closed now. I have a feeling that the local high streets will start to come back more quickly than the sort of the main high streets, if you like. And I think we're sort of starting to see this already. I mean, certainly on my local high street, I'm starting to see sort of artisan bread shops and things opening up. So and also sort of small groupings of people who are getting together under one roof, if you like, sort of the sort of slightly pop-up thing. As rents come down, people are sort of getting together and are having a little bit of a physical presence there. I think it inevitably has changed enormously. And I think perhaps before the pandemic, we probably were about 70% bricks and mortar, 30% online. And I think that will probably swap over to being around about sort of 60, 70% online. But I still think that there's still opportunities for bricks and mortar. People still want to go in and touch and feel things. And I think with fashion, in a way, it's really hard to establish the quality of something if you're buying it from an online retailer. You kind of need to feel the weight of the fabric. You need to sort of swish it around, feel what it looks like. So I think there's definitely there will still be physical stores, but I think there'll be much more about and much more kind of experiential showcases, if you like, much more than sort of the just pile it high, sell it cheap, because I think we've moved on from that.
Yeah, I do agree with Jane in that, and I don't really have much to add. The thing that I think is going to happen is like retail. I mean, the shops in the high streets, or the shops in general, it will be more like a showcase, like an experiential outlet, so you can actually go and feel the brand and touch the brand and experience it, more than a destination for shopping. I think that kind of experience is long gone, except from the very iconic department stores that you will always want to go and visit, like Galeries Lafayette or Selfridges and so on. That it's a part of the experience of getting to know a place, perhaps. But I do agree with you, Jane, that the birth of I think the rebirth of the high streets, because we have a very homogeneous, and this is not just a UK phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon, in terms of very much same old type homogeneity from a high street perspective, not giving room to the new up and coming, perhaps, you know, different type of shops. And I think that is what we want to see coming back, because it will not make sense to have, you know, a retail presence every other you know, street.
But encouragingly, I think a lot of those, as you were talking about, those iconic department stores are embracing the repair industry, the rental platforms, and having those sections in their stores so that people can access that. I know the Restory, which their Vanessa is a women's chapter member, and so is their business. And, you know, it's amazing. I know she's had a really long, hard struggle to reach this point, but amazingly now all of the you know, bigger retailers are embracing the importance of the repair industry. And I think that's really encouraging for us as consumers, and how to kind of redial our mindsets toward looking after and preserving the things that we have, rather than just going out and buying new things every time something is a little worn.
Absolutely. And, you know, I am obsessed with washing. I think washing is probably one of my favorite things, like washing clothes, because I am obsessed with the way that you can actually, you know, it's an art. I'm not going to bore you with washing or lecturing on that. My partner would be, you know, it's just I drive him insane. But I think that, you know, if you put love and care onto preserving your clothes and washing your clothes, and, you know, go at 20 or 10 or hand wash it, you know, if you do it with love, you can actually have clothes forever. Like literally, it's about how you're taking care of stuff. And you know, the cashmere jumpers and things like that. I mean, there's incredible dry cleaners that are, you know, kind of natural and don't have so many chemicals and stuff like that, that you can really, you know, if you put love, if you love what you have, you can have it forever and repair it over and over again. But it's true. I mean, I have those jackets that I have it for like 10 years, or there's some of them that I have for 20 years. I feel pride that I have a red pair of pants. I brought it with me on my original suitcase when I came to the UK when I was 23 years old. Just about fit me after lockdown, but it used to fit me pre-lockdown.
Oh no, it's actually really encouraging. In fact, there's another business that I'm aware of, and I can't say the name because I'm not quite sure if they've relaunched, but they were a cashmere company that has supplied cashmere to some of the biggest brands around the world, and they have now relaunched as a recycling and repair business for cashmere, where you can literally, and you can buy their products now, which are like, you know, baby clothes or beanies or whatever that have been made out of beautiful pieces of cashmere that have been recycled, and you can then gift those on to other people. And I love the idea of that you can share something that kind of comes with the history, but that it's been looked after and given a new lease on life. So I think there's a lot of excitement around this concept, and the fact that we've got so many people that have joined us today clearly means that we're all in the same camp, and it's very encouraging for the future. I'm aware that we need to let some people ask some questions, because I can see we've got quite a few going on in the chat. I have just one other question to ask about kind of greenwashing and understanding as consumers from both of your perspective, and maybe this is something specific to the fashion industry. But I've noticed a lot of high street brands now, particularly those ones that have a strong online presence that probably people have been shopping over lockdown, that they're using recycled polyester, and they make a point of saying recycle. Is that really a thing? Like, is that something, is it positive?
Well, this whole greenwashing thing actually really pisses me off, actually, I have to say. Sorry. I mean, the vast majority of the big brands on the high street, you read their websites and you would think, oh my God, they're so sustainable. You know, we don't have anything to worry about. And it's complete bollocks. Sorry, excuse my French, but it really is. The vast majority of it is. And I've actually just been judging the Draper's Sustainability Awards of stores. So I've got into quite a lot of detail into quite a lot of the stores. I think it's shocking. Apparently, I think there's a bill coming up quite soon, an anti-greenwashing bill, which will stop a lot of this happening. And because this is happening, there are also quite a lot of websites who will actually help brands to validate their claims. And there are also other websites where, as a consumer, you can go and check and find out if the claims are true. And one of those websites is called Good on You, and it's a very useful, obviously Diana's website as well, but they're very, very useful places where you can just go and just get an idea as to whether the retailer you're looking at is telling the truth or not, and so many of them aren't. It's a really difficult area, and if you really want to be absolutely sure, you do have to do quite a lot of research to find out whether those claims are true at the moment. It's a really difficult area, and yeah, it really annoys me.
I am totally with you, and they're pissing me off with a Latin twist. So and yeah, I mean, as a consumer, I look for the certifications, because when you go through a certification process, like if you are fair trade, or if you have the butterfly mark, or if you look at vertically integrated certifications, you will be able to understand supply chains. The other point I want to make about these recycled fabrics, which, I mean, hopefully you guys spread the word, is when you recycle fabrics, unless you recycle it with the exact same fabric that is your origin, it's not recyclable. So what pisses me off the most is everybody that is claiming circularity. The circularity is one little tiny circle, not system circularity. So if you have recycled cashmere, unless you have that cashmere recycled with cashmere, it's not recyclable again. So a lot of people recycle cashmere with polyester or something else, which just makes it not recyclable. So for example, do you know when you get plastic and you do recycled plastic, ended up being black bin bags, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar, not very luxury, but true. Those are not recyclable. So the point is, we are, using this big grand word like circularity, but the circle is this big, instead of looking at system change, which actually is a big circle that lasts, is a continuous improvement loop. So yeah, Jane, I am totally with you. Myth busting is a must. And yeah, it does definitely piss me off.
Almost even worse than that are the big retailers that have their little conscious collections, which we all know is like 1% of their turnover, and they go on and on and on about it. But then you actually ask them the question, yes, but do the learnings from this collection actually have a bearing on the way that you're going to make the rest of your collection? And they say no. And you think, well, what's the point of this? It's just purely to mislead people.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. And I think from a consumer perspective, it's quite terrifying, actually, because I suppose you feel like you're putting your money behind something good, and actually you're being misled completely. Perhaps there's we could chat afterwards, and you can share some resources or links that I can include in the follow-up email that people can go to. And I know, Diana, you and I did for the Telegraph last year a glossary around sustainable terms to help people like me understand what these terms actually mean for the process behind them, because we all have a responsibility to get educated around the lingo and the terminology in the sustainability world, as consumers, and that can help us make better decisions in terms of where we put our money. So I think what I'm going to do is open up have a look at the chat. It's been very active throughout, and it's brilliant to see that actually everybody has been sharing details with each other and insights, their LinkedIn profiles and email addresses. So please keep doing that, everybody. I would say, by all means, put your social media handles in there. I'll share the chat with everyone so that we can all be following each other and supporting, because I think, like Diana was talking about earlier, a big part of sustainability and making it work is about collaboration and putting our heads together to preserve the future for ourselves and for others. So I'm going to have just a scroll here and see if there are any questions that are kind of specific to what we've been chatting about. Just lots of hellos. Daryl says she's been lobbying government around misinformation around the recycled polyester. Taking plastic from landfill is great for furniture, building materials, 3D printing, etc. However, in clothing, this pushes the problem from landfill to oceans. Can the industry do more to educate consumers or hold brands more to account? So I think we have touched on that already with the bill, but hopefully that we answered your question there, Daryl. Do you have something else you wanted to add, Jane?
No, there are quite a lot of organisations coming through at the moment who are trying to do that, such as Fashion Roundtable are lobbying the government to try to get retailers to regulate, or to let government have the ability to regulate retailers in a way that they haven't done up until now. But I think there's a lot of people that feel it ought to be similar to the way that food is labelled, you know, that you can find out exactly what it is, where it's come from, whether it's recycled or not, you know, and actually truthfully. So I think there are a lot of organisations that I've seen that seem to be coming through at the moment to do exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, you know, at Positive Luxury, we have been working with the European Parliament, and the legislation in Europe is actually more advanced. Unfortunately, with this Brexit thing, it's like divided, but before it makes sense to be working with the European Parliament. If you go to the European Parliament website, you will be able to see what companies will be and not will be entitled to do. This bill is coming out, well, it's in Parliament as we speak in order to make a legislation. So you will not be able to do claims that are false. You cannot do that now successfully anyway, but you will have to look up proof points. And also everything that you say you're doing, you will have to back it with proof, unless they will actually make you completely take it out. And there is a lot of, like you said, Jane, conversations in the UK, like in terms of the bills. And this is being resuscitated, but it's going to take a little bit longer in the UK than in the rest of Europe. But in Europe is actually happening 1st of April. So everything that is coming from there is going to be protected. The same in the US. Since Biden has actually taken leadership in the US, a lot of the stuff that has been in conversations or completely taken out of the bill are now coming into force. And I say force in a very premeditated way. It's starting in California and then roll out in the rest of the country. I think it's by June or July this year for false claims. So yeah, like legislation is number one, and people should not be able to say, or companies should not be able to say one thing when they mean another one. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely needs to come from governance, and it has to be self-regulated into companies, because it's actually utterly unacceptable to bluntly lie to the consumer. And there is a watchdog, obviously. You have Which, and you have other watchdogs that are, kind of not just about fashion, but across the entire industry. So beauty, etc., etc. So yeah, it's coming, or here in other countries.
And what advice do you have? Because there've been a few questions about this in terms of where a brand might say that they're British made, whereas, and I know that I've fallen into that trap. I've bought something that says British made, but then it turns out that they have a factory in Bangladesh or some parts of it. And actually, I'm delighted we've got Nancy on the call today. Nancy is from Cucumber Clothing, and everything that they produce is within 5 miles of the two of Nancy and Eileen's homes in London, which I know has been something they've felt very passionate about. But I think they are up against brands that also say they're British made, where large numbers of their components come from places that are definitely not in the UK.
I mean, I'm sure Jane will be able to put a lot more light on this, but basically this is not just British made, it's French made, Italian made, Spanish made, or whatever made. Unfortunately, there's a loop in the legislation that if you say that if you ensemble in the country that all the pieces come to, you can claim that that piece of clothing is British made or French made or what have you. But the news is that it's not going to be there for much longer. So, and as we are getting closer to COP26, and I'm actually chairing the luxury section for COP26 with Divya, this is going to be kind of, it's going to be no longer a choice. Maybe people will need to play for carbon. maybe, you know, it's not going to be for the right thing to do, but this loophole is going to start getting closer and it's going to start closing down. So enjoy when you last, like burning your stop, ain't going to happen for much longer.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. I mean, there've been lots of kind of here in the chat, people are talking about, you know, one of the elephants in the room is obviously the fast fashion and the number of people that are still going to buy fast fashion because they perceive not being able to afford anything, you know, the more sustainable brands, because unfortunately, yes, largely the price point is higher. So we're still going to have people supporting the likes of Boohoo and some of these more conscious collections. Do you think there will be a turning point for people like that in the future?
Well, I think there already has been a turning point. I mean, everybody sort of, you know, rolls out Boohoo as an example of how terrible we still are, and it's true, it is terrible. But I think if you look back 10 years, you would probably, if you sort of did a poll of sort of 18 to 25-year-olds 10 years ago, you would find a very small number were actually concerned about buying sustainable fashion. And if you look at it nowadays, it's probably closer to 40 or 50%. There's a huge number of Generation Z who are using Depop, who are using clothes swapping sites, who actually feel that that's the coolest way to get your fashion nowadays, and the rest of them, okay, are still using Boohoo, but that's a lot smaller than it was. And I think we have to take, you know, we have to be optimistic here and say it is moving. It's not moving as fast as it needs to, but it certainly is moving, and that younger generation are certainly acting in a very, very different way than they used to.
And what will be the result for, obviously, as the fast fashion businesses move over to more sustainable models, or we see more sustainable businesses coming in? Do you what's the kind of impact for the job market and for employment? Because obviously a lot of these organizations employ people at minimum wage, but are employing lots of people. Do you see a shift in how, you know, in the sort of recruitment side of fashion and how that will work?
Well, I think there's two different things here. I think the move from bricks and mortar to online, we've already seen the catastrophic effect, certainly on female unemployment, that's had and will continue to have. And you know, I don't know what the answer is to that. You know, it's I guess in some way we have to find other employment for those people. But also there's the issue of employment in countries like Bangladesh, where most of the clothing is actually made, and that is a very real issue. That you know, if we stop making clothes in Bangladesh, then a lot of people, and again particularly women, will be out of work. That's why governments have to sort of find ways through this and have to plan ways through this, instead of it just sort of, you know, happening without us doing anything about it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the issue is not the country of origin. The issue is the conditions in which those workers are employed. The issue is not global supply chains. The issue is how those supply chains are protected. So it requires systemic thinking to make systemic changes. The good news about this, you know, recovery plan and building back better is that the jobs of the futures are yet to come, meaning that there is all this reskilling, you know, and there is about thinking sustainability is a massive field. So, you know, if you think back in the year 2000, nobody knew what digital was, or social media, or digital manager, or social media manager, or any of these jobs that are only happened in the last 20 years. When sustainability, if you think about it as a discipline in the same way that digital came through, sustainability is coming through. So a lot of these jobs will need to be created in order to rethink systems, in order to rethink the way that companies operate, and therefore the impacts. So I think that, yes, of course, I mean, that I come from the developing world, and there is a lot of issues in the developing world. But as the developing world can develop with sustainability at the heart of that development. And I think that's what's going to make the big shift in terms of in the next 20 years.
Thank you, Diana. We're almost at time. We've got 3 more minutes, and I'm loving the fact that I'm struggling to keep up with the conversation in the chat because everybody is so enthusiastic. And I think there's been a suggestion that we need to set up a Women in Sustainability group where everybody can keep sharing ideas and exchanging. So I might take that on board and maybe start one in a private group on LinkedIn or something and let you know where to find it, so that we can keep the conversation going, because I think really in terms of knowledge sharing, that's the first step in breaking down barriers and making sustainability and the knowledge around that more accessible. And Diana, I know you have incredible resources on your website, so I really would encourage everyone to have a look at all of the thought leadership that Positive Luxury put out about sustainability on an ongoing basis. Your newsletter as well has every time I get one, it's got a roundup of really interesting news pieces around the world that can keep you in the loop on advancements and government legislation. And so I would just like to round off by saying, you know, are there any last thoughts that you would like to share with us, Jane and Diana, in closing before we end off the chat?
I'd just like to say it's so fantastic that every time I'm on a group talking about sustainability, there are more and more people who are interested in it and more people who want to be involved. I've been looking at the questions that have been flicking up at the bottom, and it's amazing. It really is. The sort of excitement that people have generated with this. It really is.
I would agree. Thank you. And is there a key message around sustainability or what you see for the future, each one of you, that you would like to leave us with before we end our conversation today?
I think it's ask more questions, you know, trying to make better choices, and you know, keep believing that this is the future, because it will be. So do your bit. Don't give up doing your bit, even if sometimes it's a bit difficult. Just keep doing your bit. And rent.
Right, absolutely.
I think that's true. I think it's so easy to think that the problem is so huge that just by me doing my bit isn't going to make any difference. But if everyone thought that, we wouldn't get anywhere. So
no, that's true. Thank you, Jane. And I also think, you know, you were saying that rental's very much for events, and there've been a lot of comments in the chat about people feeling quite differently about that and saying, you know, you can rent clothes for day-to-day wear. Maybe it's that pair of jeans that you've always wanted that you couldn't afford. And there were some people talking about this sustainable jeans brand in Holland, I think, that rents out jeans. And so I think it's just a shift in our perception and the way that we consume and use products. So I think it's really, really exciting. And thank you both so much for putting a spring in our steps today, for sharing your insights and your knowledge. I really appreciate you making the time. I know that you are both very, very busy women. So thank you so much. And again, thank you to Collyer Bristow for supporting us and making events like this possible so that we can reach so many of you. I will be in touch with a follow-up email with the link to the recording once we've edited a little bit. And Diana and Jane, I can be in touch with you separately and see if there are any links or resources that you'd like to share in that with everybody. But thank you again so much for your time. I'm incredibly grateful. And a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. Have a good day, everybody. The sun is shining outside, so there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. Spring's on its way. Thank you so much.